If you're looking for reasons to vote this year, you don't need to look any further than the Auditor General's report on municipal finances. Every year, they paint a bleak picture, and this year wasn't any better. Collectively, the country's 257 municipalities racked up 26 billion rand in irregular spending. That term doesn't necessarily mean that money was wasted. It indicates rather that our taxes weren't spent according to proper laws. At the same time, only a small handful of councils get clean audits. That's when all their spending is neatly accounted for. But is that enough to guarantee that service delivery happened? Zukiswa Kota is a researcher and program head with the Public Service Accountability Monitor, and she joins us now to discuss this. Zukiswa, thank you so much for your time. We've seen some councils get clean audits, a lot of them getting audits that leave a lot to be desired. But even those that do get clean audits, does that mean the municipalities are getting value for money?
Thanks, Tapfuma, and I think that's a really important question. To begin with, municipal audits, or rather the audits that the Auditor General undertakes, are really important, and they're an important independent way of measuring how well or how badly the municipality is managing public funds, whether it is about how those funds are allocated, how they're spent, what kind of planning is done. So from the outset, I think the value of the audit process as it stands in South Africa today is critical, and many I think would agree with me that the audit process is one that is trustworthy, is credible, and possibly the Auditor General's office is one of those that at this point is really shoring up prudent use of public funds. Having said that, a clean audit in and of itself tells us a lot, but doesn't tell us everything we need to know about how a municipality is delivering the fundamental or the basic services in its space. And I think many of the examples that we've seen in the media and ones that you've cited on the program today really show us that there is more that's needed as a clear measure of how a municipality is functioning in its developmental role and in its service delivery role. So no doubt, clean audits, or the audit process itself, is really important, and is important, an important check of functioning where municipal finances are concerned. But beyond that, we need much more, and certainly the role of the public is fundamental.
So I think if I understand what you're saying, there is a moderate correlation between a clean audit and service delivery. But how do we make sure that we enhance that correlation, that clean audits do equate to good service delivery, and service delivery that comes at good value for money without us paying too much for these services?
Yeah, so I think that's what you speak to is what is a link, or a need to link, on the one hand, community experiences of what their municipality is doing, and on the other, even where we have indicators of strong, financial management. And so one of those areas is one that the Auditor General's office themselves have indicated over the years, which is that in order to better understand how services are being delivered, how public infrastructure is being maintained, whether or not a municipality on paper, or rather is delivering what they say they are on paper, there is the need, for example, to better engage the public, to better ensure, for instance, that the outcomes of social audits where those are being done, and there's many organizations and civic actors who are trying to map out the link between when we say that X amount has been spent on a stadium, for example. Does that stadium have, for example, seating? Does it have bathroom facilities? Does it have the ablutions that on paper a municipality has paid for, has been signed off, and a council somewhere, accounting officers have said, right, we've got a 22 million rand or 15 million rand stadium, and yet that stadium has only 3 or 2 of 10 indicators, or 10 targets have been met in relation to what was set out in the service level agreement. So there's also a need to have much greater transparency about what is delivered ultimately, and that's what's lacking. And perhaps another aspect, Tapfuma, that's really important to indicate is that the weaknesses in oversight are not just a failing on one party or on a single municipal manager or an accounting officer. Those failings also are across the process at which, for example, in the context of procurement, there hasn't been adequate oversight. We've got municipal public accounts committees whose role can be and has been quite powerful in ensuring that it's not just at the point where the Auditor General says there's been irregular expenditure that we suddenly wake up and think, oh my goodness, what happened and why and who didn't do what they were meant to do. But there are some preventative questions that a municipal public accounts committee, for example, can ask prior to the completion of that supply chain management process. So it shouldn't be that we land up with an incomplete stadium before the alarm is raised. All along the process, there are people who should have been asking those questions, raising red flags. And in many instances, that simply isn't happening. And so it's one thing to say that there's a municipality has a clean audit, has undertaken good financial management. It's another to say what has been spent on is for the public good and does meet the needs of a certain community.
Yeah, and you get a situation where even when there isn't a clean audit, there's very little consequences for those that don't perform well and very little reward for those that do perform well. Zukiswa, thank you so much for your time. Zukiswa Kota, a researcher and program head with the Public Service Accountability Monitor. Thank you for your time.